Thank you, Craig and Joe, and thanks everybody. We're going to do some questions and answers. My comrade here, Isaac Silberman Gorn, is a guy that works for Citizens Action Network, organizer extraordinaire, and Isaac will kind of moderate from up here, and I will have the mic, and I'm going to keep it in my hand, and I will come around and let you all ask your questions. And this is, again, we're going to keep it respectful. I know that this is it can be a contentious issue because it is part of gas drilling, but we're going to keep it respectful. And the scope of the questions are how pipelines, the pipeline process affects you as a landowner. Okay? So here's Isaac.
Thanks to Mary. Okay, so my name's Isaac. Again, we're going to keep it respectful, focused on pipelines. These guys have a phenomenal amount of knowledge. And I would really like to see us take advantage of that for the rest of the evening. So I see 1, 2, and 3, 4. We'll take 4 at a time. 1, 2, you, sir, in the blue, and 4. So this gentleman first.
My name is Michael Vasquez from Binghamton. And this is a very important issue, obviously, not only for New York State, but also for the nation, through all of its ramifications. There's a lot of information you gentlemen have gone through, and I have several questions, but let me start with the first thing first. In taking into account many of the situations you've mentioned, both the incidents you've had, some of the ones you've highlighted, looking at that overall, if we are able in New York State to learn from those issues, to create strong regulations, to get organizations in New York State is known for its regulations and its enforcement of them. If we are able to create regulations and enforcement codes and have people stand out there to enforce them and raise the bar so that it would be relatively safe or even safer than it is or to whatever level is considered the best, would you then change your position? Is this the concern or is it something else? Is there a level that says it's safe enough and yes, we can agree with this?
So just to rephrase that, your question is if we could regulate this well enough with proper enforcement, could it be done safely? So I'll, okay.
But would they agree with it if it can be done safely?
I'll let you guys answer that. And the other thing is we want to keep it to questions too. That's going to be one ground rule that I lay out today. So thank you, sir, for coming, for asking.
Okay, so, yeah, here's the problem. We're a nation of laws, poorly enforced laws. So we have all these rules. I mean, DEP has massive amount of rules against any problems, anything going on like this. There's got to be a rule against, 5 explosions in 15 months. But our problem is they're not enforced. I find it even funny that we call, because the first responders are all in this room. Everybody in this room is a first responder. If your neighbor's house on fire and they're gone or asleep, you dial up, you're the one that called. They don't just miraculously show up. So I will tell you that any rules put in place have to be enforced, and you have to have a mechanism to be able to call and have it. Look at the staffing in your DEC. And our DEP, they've cut the DEP 25% in Pennsylvania. We're in the boom. So it's like cops. They're not everywhere. They can't be everywhere. So you always have people running stop signs and doing things. So no matter how many rules you have in place and regulations, my feeling is on this especially, this industry especially, they're exempted from so many things with the eminent domain and the right-of-ways. I don't know. They have to prove it. I'll tell you what. I'll make you a deal. They come to Pennsylvania and solve all the problems that we're finding, hundreds and hundreds of problems that even the DEP agrees are there, then I'll consider changing my position. But until they come and clean up their act there, my mom, as being from here, and I'm a 5th generation here, for you guys, the gas is in the toilet, the price. They want to take your land and give you pennies for it. You get nothing for the export portion. And if there's damage, you wear it and you have to deal with it and, cleaning it up. I'd say wait till they prove that they can do it where the big boom is going on and wait and see. If anything, the price is going to go up for the gas and other things will happen. So if I was a New Yorker and owned land, I'd still be in wait and see mode until they prove that they could fix up messes in Pennsylvania. Joe, what about you on?
Well, it's very similar to people that think that they can get a perfect lease. That if I have a 47-page lease with all of these protections built in, The problem is what happens when they violate those. Your only recourse is to go to court. And so we could do things much better, but the inherent nature of fracking and moving this gas around is that it's dangerous and it leaks. And let's look at New York State, where the DEC has a three-way conflict. Our law mandates that they promote the development of this resource. Then they're supposed to turn around and regulate it. If that's not enough of a conflict, the third area of conflict is they're selling leases on our state forests to make profit. So you have a three-way conflict there. That's the problem with the regulatory agencies. The federal regulatory agencies are even more compromised these days because they're all funded by the industry that they regulate. There is not one pipeline study goes on in this country that the industry doesn't fund, and so they select which studies are being done. This industry is running those regulatory agencies. They're not working for us.
If I may, you're not quite answering my question, and you're making it seem, and let me explain.
Hearing, so maybe Isaac will summarize it for you.
You're missing,
So as I understand it, your question was if pipelines, I guess, could be properly regulated, would you change your position? Does that encompass it?
essentially, yes. Is there a level at which we reach safety? You essentially answered it for your point.
Yeah.
But Joe has not. That is there a level? Is there some point, regardless of at this moment, is there a level that we reach which you say, yes, it can be done, and yes, I will support it, or is it something that is ideological and therefore will never be acceptable?
So theoretically, could this be done safely? Is that the question?
I think the question is, I think it's an opinion question, unless I'm mishearing. Yeah. So I think the question is, in your opinion, if this could be regulated, would you, Joe Heath, be in favor of it? Would you switch your position?
No.
Good answer. Great. No, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it, and I believe you got his.
So, in the interest of time, we're going to keep moving. I saw someone up front here. Was it you, sir? Hold on. Wait for the mic, just so everyone can hear.
My name is Thomas Yale, and I live in Maine, New York, right by Binghamton Regional Airport. My question was, when you were talking about Sun Oil Company, it runs about 2,000 feet through my property, and right now it's about 40 feet in front of my barn. And how far from that pipeline will they put, if they do go with eminent domain, how far from that pipeline, the Sun Oil Company, will they put this other pipe, 24-inch pipe?
Right. So the question is, how far? So he's got the Sun Oil 40 feet from his barn, right?
Yes.
So the question is, how close will this new 24-inch line be to his buildings?
Alongside of the Sun Oil Company pipe, the 6-inch pipe. There's two of them, and I thought there were 8-inch pipes. How far from that? Because they run right through my driveway. My driveway is approximately not quite a quarter of a mile, and then it goes over to the house.
Well, where would you want them to put it?
Well, that was my question. How far? I would want them not to go too far from the pipeline. You know, if they went from the right-hand side of the pipeline looking, let's say, northeast, then I'd want them to go to the right. But if they went towards the barn, I wouldn't want them to put it right through my barn, 40 feet away from it. So the question is there any regulation on that?
So I guess maybe the question is, does the landowner have any say in where the pipeline goes?
I mean, sure, they're going to run it parallel to it, but how far away from it?
Well,
How close to the existing pipeline are they going to run it?
there is no regulation that causes them to separate it a certain distance. But what you have to do is you have to look back at the wording of your original pipeline. It may have only allowed them to put in one pipe, so that they're going to have to come back to you. They should be asking you where you want it, and working with you if you have to take the pipeline. You should tell them you don't want it.
That answers my question, I guess. You know?
There's no regulation. They can put it right next to it.
Well, that would be good, but not to go too far away from it, especially towards the house. My home is approximately...
Is the old one still
let's
being
say-
used?
No, the old pipeline is,
300 feet from the pipeline. That's on the left-hand side.
So I'll answer it. So first of all, you got to find out, even if you're interested in this, what they're planning on trying to pay you. And if the federal government gets involved, so then you don't, even we were told we don't have a
Look,
choice.
eminent domain is the last thing, right? I just had 92 acres taken off of me for expanding the north runway of the Binghamton Regional Airport. Now, eminent domain supposedly is going to be our last resort.
Right,
And they're going to give you surrounding land sales, and that's all.
right.
So,
Yeah,
So
I don't know how to make a decision for you, but you're going to get no choice in where they want to put the pipeline. If they
Can I-
decide to put it somewhere, you're not going to get a choice.
I want to take a stab at that. As I understand it, there's
what I'm
no,
concerned about is if they're going to use this pipeline, go right by it.
they might or they might not. It's a question of, I think, what the company wants to do. There are no regulations in terms of how close they go to the existing pipeline or how close they go to your house.
Sun Oil come in on this, so they're going to, like, they've got like 10 feet there, the width of it, or 10 feet each side of it, you know, where the pipe goes through.
the Sun Oil line has been decommissioned, so it's not an active pipeline right now, so they can do whatever they want with it. I mean, they don't have to consider where the Sun pipeline's laying. They have to consider their best route, because that's a decommissioned pipeline. It's not active right now.
No, I know it isn't. I know that.
Next question, Isaac.
So maybe you can chat with these guys afterwards. I think that might be a good idea.
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to say, you've offered to look at the easements, but you're not looking for work. You will review them for free, right? I just want to make that point.
How this question came up is, I'm going to put a ditch in front of my barn. I have a drainage problem. My wife says to me, don't do it. They may put the pipeline right by it. So,
Right, yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think the answer is that we don't know when the company can do what they please. I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
when they can do what they please, that's eminent domain then.
Right.
That's where it comes. All right.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question in the interest
Thank
of
you,
time.
sir.
Sir, I've got the gentleman in the blue, and then this gentleman, and then I want to, after those two, I'll take more hands, okay, as I see them, and you'll be first after them.
Okay, so you've shown a couple of instances where pipelines blew up. You've also mentioned that this pipeline would bring fracked gas from Pennsylvania up to be exported. Now, also in this fracked gas is radium-226 or whatever that isotope is that has a very long half-life. What happens if a pipe blows up with this radioactive gas that hasn't decayed enough to pose a problem? Are there any health risks associated with radioactive release into the atmosphere of this, either gas that explodes or leaks from this pipeline? Do you know? Can you answer that?
Right on, I can start.
Hold on. We're going to...
I can answer that as part of Concerned Health Professionals of New York. There's a Dr. Martin Resnikoff who's done extensive research into the radioactive isotopes. The half-life is about 4 days away. So if you get your gas before it's traveled for 4 days from Pennsylvania, you're getting radium-226 burning in your propane in your stove, and it's not being tracked by the DEC. There are no regulations in place to track the radioactivity. And in Pennsylvania, there were drill cuttings that put off radioactive alarms. Those drill cuttings were held for a matter of months in Pennsylvania and then shipped to Idaho for disposal. So it's a big, huge problem, the radioactivity that's underneath the radar, and it's not being tracked. When we get the waste from Pennsylvania into New York, they're not testing for radioactivity, and it's a big problem in Pennsylvania, but it's under the radar and there aren't regulations. So yes, it is an issue.
And so I think as it pertains to pipelines, I think that there is a degree of unpredictability and it could be an issue.
And I'll add, same thing, go back to the 2012 Emergency Hazard Management Plan. There's about 10 pages on radon. Pennsylvania is one of the highest radium levels underground in the United States. Highest radon. And so we have a real big problem when health sales for radon. But there's a good reference for you, and this is first responders talking about the radon levels, and that nobody has done an effective study or even effectively talking about the issue and how long it might last in the gas and what happens on the other end. So,
And if you look in the USGS, Google it for radioactivity in the Marcellus Shale, and the New York State DEC has put out papers on the radioactivity in the gas, so you can find some research that's been done. It is an issue.
Sir, thank you for your question. So, Vic, do you have a question?
Sure. First, I'd like to thank, I don't need that. My name's Vic Furman. I'm Field Director for the Joint Landowners Coalition. And I agree with what Joe said and what Craig said. You cannot trust gas companies or landsmen when they come knocking on your door. Now, one of our jobs as the Joint Landowners Coalition is to educate the public. We have 3 expert lawyers that work with us. So if anybody ever wants to talk about it, we have lawyers. You can come to me after the meeting. I'll tell you how to get a hold of them and to answer many of your questions. But I do have a few questions pertaining to what you said.
The top one.
These other guys, I timed them, got 12 and 16 minutes.
Come on, don't waste some more time. You got a question?
Okay, hold on. Just pick the highest priority question, the most pressing one that's burning in your head, Vic.
As a veteran of the United States who's been in war, as a father of 2 children who've been in war, both served in Iraq, I want to ask you why you don't mention the casualties that are caused on roadside bombs, the ship in Yemen where 13 American soldiers, Navy men were killed, 36 were wounded, many of them had limbs lost, and the 6,886 troops that died in Iraq. Why don't you talk about that? You talk about the dangers of fracking,
as this
the
pertains,
dangers
this is
of
about
moving gas,
pipelines. I'm
but you don't
just
talk
trying to
about-
understand your question here.
okay, well,
What's your question? So why we're not talking about military issues? Because this is about
You're saying
pipelines that are
you say
transporting
the gas
gas.
is going to go overseas.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Right.
But isn't
Correct.
it true that 98% of the frack gas in the United States is from the United States now because of the Marcellus drilling and other formations? It's a fact.
Okay,
Now,
do you have a question, Vic, here?
Hold
on.
I want you to answer that question about how you made a statement of all going overseas when 98% of it is being used here.
Okay, so I'm going to field it to these guys because they're...
That's exactly about it.
we can relate it, hold on, we can relate it to either pipelines or gas drilling, that's fine, because I understand what you're saying, Vic. Here's the problem. They're unrelated issues. How does drilling a gas well, which is the poster, bringing a soldier home, if we send the gas outside, it's trapped here, so you understand that, right? It's trapped in America right now. Can't get out unless they export, so the export is in process, it's not available, that's why the price is so low. But the issue is not, I'd rather see everybody come home too, I'll agree with you on that, Vic, and not have to, do the problems for foreign oil, we'll say. But if we turn around and sell it all to the foreign entities that are the same people, if we're selling this to China and Russia, I don't consider them my friend either. So there's the problem, is you're making a choice. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So we don't want it coming in, but we're going to send it out and sell it to people. So if we contaminate ourselves here, isn't that just as bad as having a soldier over getting damaged and we're getting damaged here? Why don't we either, if we're going to drill it here, keep it here? What's the focus of sending it out except for somebody to make money?
All right. Okay, so Vic, thank you for your question.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Vic, I appreciate your question. So I see 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this gentleman in the gray.
Hi, my name is Don Conklin. I'm from Maine, New York. And that red line that you go down through, my house is right underneath it, okay? We're about maybe 40, 45 feet away from the existing line. What is the minimum distance that pipeline should be away from our house.
There's no setbacks.
Safety-wise.
None. It's FERC. And look at FERC. There is no minimum setback requirement in a Class 1 rural area. Zero. They can bore it underneath the foundation of your house if that's the best route to do it. And anybody that argues any different wasn't at all the scoping hearings for the Constitution or anywhere else. There is no mandated setback required by law for any entity, and federal law in this case would override any state, local, or county law. That's just the way it works. So the feds get the right to do it, they get the right to do it wherever they want. They draw a line that's most convenient for them in the best direction, and that's where it goes. You have no choice. That's why you wanna, you're not going against the gas industry or the pipeline company with this. You're including the federal government, trying to tell you what you can or can't do with your property and where you can or can't have something on your property. That's it. So, I mean, we can argue the semantics of the gas and oil and all these things, but let's get to the fact. They're going to put this wherever they want to.
Okay, would they ever buy my property or my house?
Would the
They only want
pipeline
the piece.
company buy your?
No, they only want the section they're going to run it through. They don't. Matter of fact, it's funny. If you look at the gas industry itself, they don't buy any surface to speak of unless they're putting a compressor station, and even then they'll lease it. They only own a percentage of the product, the gas that comes or oil that comes out of the ground. That's all they are, is a percentage partner with the landowner. They're very unusual if they'll buy anything, because they're not in the business of buying land, they're in the business of removing minerals. But it was a great question, but that's how it is. And you don't have to believe Joe or I. Just go to the scoping hearings and see what's going on, and they will tell you there is no minimum setback of any kind or safety requirement.
Right. So thanks for the question. So I
Thank you.
had this gentleman next in the back.
Yeah, my name is Jim Meadam. I own property in Lyle. I'm just confused. Did you get $5 a foot or did you get $115?
Yeah, it ended up being $115 on a 40-foot total easement instead of $5 a foot on a lifetime easement for the entire group that held out. My neighbors didn't get that. They went up to $15 a foot for my neighbors that signed early.
And you were in the Constitution line?
No, that's the laser line. Constitution is still in the FERC process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
No
you very
problem.
much.
Thank you for the question.
So I've got this gentleman in the blue and then you in the maroon, sir. So, sir, I'm going to keep it limited to a question, please.
Yeah, this one is for either Craig or Joe. I mean, it's been in the paper numerous times that the first gas well was drilled in Fredonia in 1821, and now we're here in 2013. Has any of what you've discussed as far as laying, gas pipelines and everything, what has changed so drastically since gas has been fracked using high volume horizontal drill bores? What's changed so drastically in pipeline law and eminent domain and everything else that you've discussed about pipelines? What's so different from 1821 to now?
Okay, I want to just take a quick, so his question, I guess, is, so if gas extraction has been around since the 20s, what's different from then until now? Just to clarify one point, high volume slick water hydraulic fracturing from long longitudinal wells is a relatively new process that was started heavily in PA in about 2008. It's been around, since the 2000s or so? So horizontal fracking, high volume horizontal fracking is a relatively new process. In terms of law, that's a question for Joe.
Yeah, I like to, but I'll go to Joe in a second, but I like to explain it this way. If you go to Salt Springs Park, there's many gas wells where they went down and they had heating, they cooked, and they did their lighting in the Wheaton house right in the park. But that was a vertical hole they went down, and they only pressurized it to get the gas coming up straight down. They didn't push down 15,000 psi and then turn it sideways a mile and a half. So the problem is the pressure that they're using and whether they're turning it sideways.
You're not answering my question.
Yeah, I'm telling you the difference between what happened in 1821 and now.
I asked about what is different in the law. What has changed from 1821 to 2013 regarding all the laws and regulations about laying pipelines under
Okay,
the ground.
that's an important question.
It's a fundamental, simple question.
So I guess for Joe to rephrase, what has changed from the 20s until now in terms of laying pipelines? How has the law changed in terms of laying pipelines?
Well, first of all, we have no regulations in New York relative to gas drilling. We keep hearing that we have the best in the country. There are no regulations now.
He's asking about pipelines specifically.
Pipelines. Actually, they have deregulated more in the last 10 years. And one of the announcements that when the president said that he was going to pause on the Keystone pipeline, on the other hand, he said, we're going to accelerate the approval process for other pipelines. So if anything, the minimal federal regulations have become weaker as we see more and more of this industry coming at us. FERC does not turn down applications.
And if you read, they want to go to a 90-day, approve it. 90 days. You have 90 days to approve what they want to do. Right now, it takes an average of 12 to 16 months because people want to know what's going on in their neighborhood and do the hearing. How do you have scoping hearings that take up to a year if you pack it into 90 days from the point where they file to when they get an approval to do it? I don't know about you, but not many things happen fast that are good. Nothing that goes up fast lasts very long. So you want to have a process where they take everything into consideration for safety.
I think we've adequately answered it. So who else has questions? I see one in the back. I'll take a couple hands. 1, 2. Okay. Well, 1, 2, 3, and we'll come back to you. Is it a quick one? Yes. Okay. Excellent. That's what I like. All right. So I can't see who you are in the back, but go ahead.
Hi. My name is Joyce Snavlin, and I live in Tully Valley. And I was wondering, when the first responders showed up the second time at the explosion and there was no sirens, what made that difference? Did someone give them a message that when they respond to some of these explosions that they weren't to have sirens?
Well,
or was that certainly wasn't made by the first responders, that decision?
Correct. It's only our speculation, but we immediately, when we found that out, went to the EMA director, Bob Stout, Steve Stout, he calls himself, in Susquehanna County. And being that my dad was so far, and even in Susquehanna County, he was an emergency management person, but I asked the same question. Here's the issues I have, because he didn't have an answer. No, we didn't treat it any differently. But we said, did you run the air raid siren? No. Did they run with their sirens on? No. I mean, so they did do something different from 11 o'clock in the morning a year before to now. Here's the problem I'm having. You drive down into our area, the billboards. We've got the oil and gas industry sponsoring the fire department. They're buying the foam trucks. They're doing all these things, which is great. I'd love it if that was all it was helping out the community to get these things. But my fear is when you start, well, I'll give an example. They tried to donate $10,000 to the Silver Lake Township Police Department, and the chief of police sent them back the check. I can't take your money, because that might influence our decision-making process. My job is to stay neutral. He explained it this way. When you call 911, they don't ask you what your political affiliation is, what color you are, or what religion you are. Their job is to send somebody out to see what's going on. Our fear is the same as you're just asking. What is the influence that would cause a change in that type of emergency response? That you need to worry about, because there is a lot of, we got a $3.3 million donation that was facilitated by Cabot for our hospital, and now it's being built. And I thanked Cabot for it, and I also I congratulated Rex Allen, our CEO of our hospital. But I also asked him, what do they want for it? Because nobody helps raise $3 to $4 to $5 million for a hospital without having some, they can do it for the community, that's fine. But that's our issue, is we have to be careful where it goes from we're being good with the community and we're helping out to influencing the way that people think and allow things to happen. And I agree with you. That was my first thought, was what's going on here. And I'll finish it with this. When I moved in 2010, every day I went into town in Montrose. It's an 8-mile each way, so it's a 16-mile loop, and I can go in a big circle. I would see trucks pulled over every single day of all kinds, pipeline installation, gas drilling. And then Governor Corbett got elected, and in 2011 until now, in the last 2 years, I'm not kidding you, I've not seen one gas industry truck pulled over in anywhere in my vicinity. That's 2 solid years. We want to know why. They couldn't have gotten that much better at their taking care of the vehicles and having people without driver's license problems. So our problem is we want to make sure that the first responders are doing just their job and they're not being politically motivated or told what to do and not to do. I just want them to show up and put the fire out or help out if it's the police. That's it. So I'm hoping that answered part of your question.
All right, so who was number 2? I forgot. I saw this gentleman. It was you, sir, and then over to you, and then I think we're gonna end the night with you, sir, because it's getting late.
Yeah, my name's Tom Nadd. I'm from Onondaga County. Apparently this pipeline is following the Sun Oil easement. Does that mean that Sun Oil has already turned that easement over to the pipeline company?
Okay, so that's a legal question. I'm going to rephrase it so Joe can hear it. But what he's asking, so it's running along the Sun Oil pipeline. His question is whether that means that Sun Oil has transferred the easements to Millennium.
Well, we're looking for documents as to whether or not that transfer has happened, and we haven't found them yet. They will have to transfer. It's a matter of filing one piece of paper with the county clerk, but so far we have not seen them. We're going back into the county clerk's office in Cortland, hopefully this week, to see whether or not that's happened. But yes, the companies would have to make an official transfer of the rights from one to the other.
That's a very good question, and it is a nuance also. So I'm going to go to you, sir. Just wait for the microphone if you could.
Jeff's got a booming voice.
Hi, I'm Jeff Wright. I'm from Syracuse, New York. And a simple question, I hope, is we have an alarm system. If we set off the burglar alarm, they'll let us go once, and if we do it again, they charge us $100 in a certain period of time, you know, to cover the cost of those people that respond and the cop going through your house. If they set off this and all these first responders go, is the taxpayers cover that, or do they get billed?
Well, I can answer that. It's the headline of the paper. If you look up the Lathrop incident, it took about 7 months to get the answer after, no, it actually came in December or January the following year. So 10 months, no fines in the Lathrop incident. None. Zero. None collected. If you look at, they're still finishing the investigation on the Brooklyn Township explosion and fire. Well, if there was none, zero. What are we talking about? So yeah, you're right. All that manpower, all those people show up, everything, and there's no fines. So we asked that direct question of the DEP. What's going on here? I mean, their job is to give them the permit to do something, oversee that they do it correctly. But sadly, we found out that the DEP after that explosion was responsible for one thing: whether the air quality issues were met. Nothing else. And so we asked, when that building was on fire and burning plastic going in the air, did you have somebody there monitoring it? Well, it took 4 hours for us to get there from Williamsport, so we didn't have anybody there. Did they have a meter? No. I mean, they didn't even have the meter to show what was coming off it. So our issue is, we need the stuff there. I'm asking for that incident especially, because we're talking pipelines and compressor stations here. So far, over 400 compressor stations have been installed of this type in Pennsylvania in the last 8 years, 400. I asked a simple question: how many of them have had real-time monitoring for 90 days where it was running at full tilt and they had a monitor on each stack, noise monitor, you know, all that, odor meters, whatever they can do to just tell us what's really coming out? That has been done 0 times, 0 in the state of Pennsylvania. They'll do stack tests with the engines, they'll do all these things on paper, but when I lived in California, every other year they put a pipe up the tailpipe of your car, a meter, and they told what was coming out, and they had to adjust it if it was over the amounts. It's very simple to do. You could attach those monitors to a computer. It could send real time. We could all look at it on the DEP website, so we could find out what they invite to my neighborhood. There is 0, neither will they answer the question of why there's not. So we're asking, like the mini-sink one here, why not do that? There's a lot of concern. If there's nothing bad coming out of it, then the industry and the company should have no problem showing us that all that comes out is Febreze. You know what I mean? Come on. That's not the case. So, and we know it. So the answer to that is, yeah, there's no fines and there's not going to be for some reason. So we haven't got that answer yet.
Okay, great. So we're going to end with this gentleman, and we're going to call it a night.
Has to do with insurance. Again, Don Conklin from Maine. Insurance. Okay, insurance. Has anybody ever been refused, like, house insurance because of the pipeline, especially ours is going to be so close? And are you aware of any significant increases in insurance because of a pipeline going in?
So has anyone been denied insurance? Have rates gone up because of it, because of the pipeline?
Well, the insurance policy that you have on your home covers residential use. It does not cover industrial use. What we've seen in Madison County recently is that people are losing their insurance even if they have a lease without drilling, because they've agreed to have industrial activity on their land. That's a violation of their homeowner's insurance, and it's a violation of your mortgage. One of the reasons you should not voluntarily accept this first offer of the easement from the pipeline company is you then become their commercial partner voluntarily, and you then accept at least some of the liability, and you will have an insurance problem, and your homeowner's insurance will not cover that activity because it's not residential in nature. So there's a very serious insurance question to this. If you hold out and it's forced on you by eminent domain, you don't accept that liability. That's one of the issues that I need to add to my presentation. So there are very serious insurance consequences from any type of industrial gas activity, including a pipeline. These companies know they're risky. That's the problem. You also are in violation of your mortgage if you sign a gas lease or agree to have this kind of industrial activity coming through your property. You're reducing the value of your property according to the bank, and those people are having problems with that as well. So that's why we're saying don't just take that rushed offer. Take it to somebody that really knows all of those legal consequences, because most of us intend to pass our property on to our sons and daughters or grandsons. Once that easement is on your property, they're going to be saddled with all of those negative results. So you have to be very careful. Insurance is a very serious problem.
Right.
And I'll say on my rectangular property, originally when I got there, they had staked the pipeline to go right through the middle of it. It's 115 acres, and in Pennsylvania we're allowed to break down into 9.9 acres, as long as it's not 10-acre parcels. I can sell off lots through that. When you cut it right through, I had them put it at the very top. At the very least, that was, you know,
Dead down the middle.
you did down the middle, and there's the problem. And I am hearing about people. Until the insurance company finds out, everything's hunky-dory, or the mortgage company. But once they go do title search and find things out, they start going, hey, wait a minute. Why didn't you notify us? Well, why? Because read the clause here. And they don't realize they're in direct violation of their mortgage or the insurance clause, and that's the issue. The gas and oil industry should be researching that, and if that's a problem, but they can't do that. They got to get the thing done. They put it in, and then you find out later if there's a problem, and you're the landowner. I mean, the same thing would happen with liens on your property for anything. That's happening too. And there's the issue. Put a lien on the property you don't know about, that somebody didn't get paid, mechanic's lien, and then you find out about when you go to get a mortgage, sell the property, or take a loan or anything else, and they go, hey, yeah, we'll give you the money right away for the new tractors as long as you clear that $150,000 mechanic lien on your property. What? I mean, these are not things we should be finding out about. Since we're partners, we should know about them up front. That's the key. This meeting is about you getting knowledge to be able to go ask questions, not us telling you something, but you asking the right questions to these companies and the federal government about what they're doing, and make sure it's something you're interested in. As Joe said, first thing you do is say no. At the very least, they get more serious with you and taking you at your, as effectively trying to talk to you as a real entity, instead of you say yes right away and it's all gone. You've given every right you have a way to do anything about this.
Is there a checklist any place that you can go to check off items?
I would imagine that we can set something up where we can, at least Joe can. It's easy enough to go down just things in order of what happens and recommendations. It's important, no matter which side of the issue you're on in this, is knowing what your rights are and not getting forced to do anything against your will. That's what we're trying to talk about here. Is Joe's a lawyer, and then you have to go get a lawyer if they try to do it. So it's better to answer those questions up front and know what you're in store for, instead of instead of just having it happen to you. You look like an adult. I'm an adult. I don't just let things happen to me now. You actually you should have a say in it. Otherwise, you're not a free person, right? So, and if you have a landowner, you're paying taxes on that. You don't want to disrupt it or have a problem happen. So, what we'll try to do then, probably as this progresses, is get some kind of a list. The first thing is, what did Joe say? When they show up at the door, send you a letter, you say no. Because you have a choice right now before the feds get involved and start doing things. So say no, don't let them on your property. The survey of the property, no. Sounds really innocuous. Forget it. Stay off my property until I decide what I want to do. You're not going to survey, because that's one of the things they need to check mark for the federal government, that you let them survey your property. I will tell you, I've never allowed it, never said yes to it until we already had an agreement. But when they did the seismic survey in my area, they came on the property and just did it. And then they know what's underneath your property. It's not fair. That's like they're playing a game of cards with you, and they get to hold them up to their chest, and you have them on your forehead like that. Don't give them any more power of your power than you want to give up.
Right. And if I could cut in here just with a couple points. The industry is aware of the mortgage and insurance issues. There's a national meeting of the oil and gas producers in Boston in November. I can't remember who's sponsoring it, but it's industry funded and industry sponsored, and they have an entire day of how are we going to deal with this mortgage and insurance issues, liability, how are we working with this. So it's a national conference in Boston in November, and yeah, they're dealing with it. They know it's a big, huge problem. And I just want to remind everybody that Joe's not here seeking work, but he would love a little bit of work. If you would give your easements to Joe, we're all learning about this together. There's some big questions that we have to research. Has Millennium taken title of those easements? How big are the easements? Because there's a 12-inch pipeline that has a 75-foot clear-cut right-of-way, 50-foot permanent right-of-way. This is going to be a 24-inch pipeline, so we're figuring it's going to be at least a 75-foot easement. We don't know what that means for the easements unless we see them. So if you could get easements to Joe, again, he's not looking for work and he's not taking on work, but we can learn a lot by looking at these easements and hopefully send you in a direction to get some help when we find competent lawyers that are experienced. And Mr. Conklin, do you use the internet? Because, okay, because forget me and Facebook, I'm too old. But if you go to Stop the I-81 Pipeline, or just Stop the Pipeline is the Constitution Pipeline, there are a ton of documents in GDAC, Gas Drilling Awareness of Cortland County, will have a lot of references. And that handout that you're talking about, What Do I Ask? That's being developed. We're running it by legal, but it is a whole 3-page trifold of here's what they should answer you in writing. How does this impact my mortgage? How does it impact my insurance? What are my rights for future development? Blah, blah, blah. So that will be there on both the GDAC website and the Stop I-81 Pipeline and Stop the Pipeline websites.
Okay, so we're working.
Now, on that very checklist you're talking about, there are several available just by writing a checklist for pipelines and for eminent domain, or you can go to jlcny.org or .com, and there's a checklist there.
All right, thanks, Vic.
Thank you. All information is good. Thank you.
We're working on developing materials still. We're actually our group is a couple months old. We've been at this trying to find out as much as we can and learn from people who have been working on similar battles, particularly the Constitution. Joe is taking some of this work on pro bono in terms of looking at easements. Sorry for saying that, Joe. And I really want to just close by thanking Mary. We did a ton of work to bring this all together. We had a whole team that did it. Mary, Sheila, Mary, thanks so much for that. This is a fantastic space. And thanks to these guys also for traveling. We're lucky to have some real expertise in the room. And really, this intent is to start a dialogue. This is a serious issue. Everyone in this room is going to be dealing with this firsthand. So let's open up dialogue and everyone have a good night. Drive safely. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
I have a couple announcements as you're leaving. Please go get some baked goods. They're delicious, they're homemade, there's pumpkins and brownies and all kinds of stuff, and we don't want to eat them because we'll get fat if we eat them. What? And also, there's 2 announcements as you're leaving. A couple of events. There's the antidote to all this gas use for homes. There's 2 home tours, October 5th in Skinny Atlas, and the next weekend, October 12th in Virgil. Farms and homes using solar, geothermal, and wind energy, and I'm going to give it to Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm a regional organizer in Central New York with New Yorkers Against Fracking, and I'd just like to invite those of you who are keen to that position to our meeting on Wednesday. It's at the Syracuse Peace Council office at 2013 East Genesee Street on the 2nd floor at 6:30. So we welcome you to join us there to talk about what's going on politically in Albany, as well as different activities such as this around the Central New York area. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Emily. Yes. What did I forget? Someone said my name. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for coming. And I also want to say, let this sift in shell shock media. Cirs McConkey is one of the directors, and his videos are all online and available. So if anyone that you know might be interested in this material for input, shell shock media is a wealth of information about all kinds of meetings that have happened around the state. So get some cookies.